how did you end up getting a sponsor? Because a lot of people struggle to get it.
People who want to start career in say media entertainment industry, what a certain set of skills that you look at while hiring? Or so if somebody wants to start but they are not so good with communication, what are some of the things that they can do to improve themselves? You feel that freedom of expression, you talked a lot about it. Is this something that is driving rage on podcasts these days as well? Many people are doing
See, podcast was even a thing then.
Okay.
It's so new now. And in fact, this whole situation of 3-camera shoots, this is not a podcast, this is a TV show.
Hi Nisa, welcome to Salaried Talks. How everything began from RJ to Radiowalla to IPL franchisee. It's quite exciting one.
Well, how long is your show now? Okay. I have a question for you. You're a young show. And how did you end up getting a sponsor? Because a lot of people struggle to get it. So, in fact, you should be talking about how your journey is, because there's so many podcasters who are trying to make it in life and hopefully make it gainful. How did you do that?
So the journey to get a sponsorship is basically because on the back of content that I've been building since last 2 years. So I built a solid distribution of close to 6 lakh followers on Instagram. And then YouTube was something that I was trying the idea of maybe starting something here. So that distribution base is already there, and those are working professionals with more than 3 years of work experience. So I think that is where synergy was, because of which the Apna got on board with the idea that okay, you are trying with the podcast thing, why not we go ahead and sponsor it, because there is synergy between what you are trying to solve for, what we are trying to solve for.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it also helps that he knows how to play around the Google algorithms.
Yeah. I think YouTube, I was late to the party, but yeah, now I'll try to play along with it.
Good, take us all with you. So yeah, sorry, if you can do smaller questions, then I can give you a better answer. Otherwise, this is too wide, you know.
Got it. So basically, I'll then talk about your journey as RJ. How were your days in
As an
US?
RJ, okay.
Yeah. And how did the idea came of maybe starting Radiowalla? We can touch base on that.
All right, so that's a good start. I'm very proudly saying that I was one of two people that did all formats of radio for the last 50 years.
Right.
The other person was Amin Saab, who recently passed away.
Okay.
And I guess I'm the only one left standing with 50 years of radio experience, because I started early. In movies, you have child artists, and they rarely become heroes when they grow up older. And hopefully, I still have aspirations of becoming the radio hero that Amin Saab was. But I started when I was 7.
Okay.
And this is my 50th year in radio. So it's, for me, it's a golden jubilee year. So that's where it started. It started at All India Radio. And my mother used to be a presenter in All India Radio as a freelancer. And there was something that she was doing that needed children on there. Clearly, nepotism in radio began quite early. And I was part of that production. And that's when I first experienced being on this side of the mic. And since then, it's always been part of my body now.
Got it. So you started quite early, when at that time I think the media industry was also building up. It was in a build-up phase.
Oh, that time there was no media industry. It was just Doordarshan or All India Radio. And there were movies and there were magazines. But that's about it. There was no media industry as you now know it.
Right. So how was advertising back in those days? Like it was mostly jingles, or how was it?
Yeah, that's all there was. And those jingles were pretty creative. You still remember them.
Right.
Right? And today's jingles, you don't remember them even 5 minutes later.
I think because there's a lot of bombardment of advertisements as well.
No, it's lack of creativity.
Right.
Not much thought is going in, because there's so many channels now that everyone's trying to club everything in.
Right.
And there was one channel, so people took their time, because that's the only shot they had at getting out at the audience. Here, there's so many. So the downside of too much is mediocrity.
Right. Plus attention span also is decreasing.
Yeah, well, because of that. That's why mediocrity has become okay now. In those days, you did everything to a point that it had to be close to perfect.
Right.
So they spent a lot of time on it.
Right.
Even content creators. And because that's the new normal, most people don't realize what good quality content is.
Right.
And they don't recognize it, because they just flip the page or swipe. The swipe mentality has become so prevalent that nobody stops to see, okay, how much effort or what is the real content behind this.
Right.
So yeah, that's the artifact of this development and democratization of media.
Right.
It's also good because more people have a voice now.
Right. So how did the idea of Radiowalla came to you, that how to start this thing?
Well, Radiowalla was a progression of many things. As I told you, I started when I was 7. Then when I was 16, I had my own show. And I was wondering how people did radio. And when I had my own show, I realized that All India Radio didn't give you much freedom.
So there were certain guardrails that
Oh,
other.
many. It was so much that it was stifling.
Okay,
And I decided that I'm going to not do this because they would tell you to pick your songs. In those days, it was just songs. They'll pick your songs, then they'll tell you to write a script and give them those elements separately. So there was no recording or broadcasting in the
so
studio.
everything was collated together.
They would collate it. So I had
Okay,
no idea what the final product was sounding like.
right.
So I thought that was the most ridiculous thing of a use of such a beautiful medium. And well, then life went on, and it took me on stage. So then I became an MC on stage, and I did over 500-600 shows
Great.
in my youth.
You
And
still look quite young.
well,
So
thank you. And that continued. So at the end of the day, it's all communication, whether you do it behind a mic or in front of an audience or in front of a camera. And I kept doing many things apart from having a career on the side, and that took me to America. The career then stopped. I had a first startup here in Bangalore, which was Bangalore's first city magazine called Blossom City.
okay,
I was 21, right out of college. I was a criminologist with a journalism degree as well, so it was something to do. My mother started the magazine. A year later, she found a great job in corporate India,
Mhm.
left the magazine in my hands. And I did what I could in those days. 4 years later, the magazine shut because the Kuwait War happened, and there was a magazine in the publishing industry was not considered an industry then. So
Got it.
so no banks would help you with working capital and all of those.
So
And
everything was bootstrapped back then.
well, for me it was because I didn't come from a business family. I
Right.
came from a Fauji family. My dad was in the Navy, and whatever little gratuity he earned, he put into this for my mother. But she then got this job and left it with me, and I was fresh out of college and no idea what business even meant. I'm more a creative guy. The business part I learned much later, and so I shut the magazine. 4 years we ran it. It was good. I learned a lot, including selling advertising. So that's
Got
when
it.
I became an ad sales guy. And then it went on to then I went to the US to do my master's degree, and that's where I came across radio again.
Got it.
Okay, America radio was what it was meant to be, free.
It
And
is still free there.
it's still free.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It's actually very free.
Okay.
And that was refreshing for me. So I got involved during college and during my work in a local radio station that did an Indian show for an hour for a week.
Okay.
It was called Music of India. It was 1 hour on a Saturday morning, once a week, in a college radio station. The local community that was Indian there had been running that show for a while, so I knocked on their doors and said, "Hey, can I get a show?" So I got a show once a month in the rotation. And that's how I began my radio career in the US. And it was refreshingly free, and I could say what I want and play the music I wanted and interview whoever I wanted. Of course, that show did not belong to me, it belonged to the Indian Association over there. And so I did have guardrails as well,
Right.
and that was still restricting. So I came to a point where I said, no, if I do radio next, it's got to be on my terms. And I had a career going on the side, which was more in the television space. But when I was doing this show, I was actually unemployed.
Okay.
When I started this, um, I was unsalaried. uh, yeah, it was a tough life, but a growing one. I had to make ends meet. I made the mistake, or I would say, in hindsight, may not have been a mistake, of getting married when I was still a student, doing my master's over there. And both of us were struggling. We didn't have jobs. And so we did what we had to do, clean bathrooms and delivered Domino's pizza. And
Was it 2001
no,
or
this was the 90s.
90s?
Sorry, I'm 57, so I'm going back a little bit.
I think that time globalization had not picked up. It was picking up
No,
slow.
America's scenario was different. So here things were changing. I left when it was changing. The year I left was 92,
Right.
when satellite dishes were just coming into being and you could see Star TV
Hmm. Got it.
through those big dishes. That cable then was starting to be laid in homes. So all these wires you see everywhere now,
Right.
oh,
Right.
that
Right.
mess started then.
Mhm.
And but I left at that point. So I missed all of that happening here. All the growth in India I missed because I stayed in America for 15 years. But when I had an opportunity to get out of this situation, I got my first job in the television business. Uh, and it was a great job. And it wasn't very well paying. I barely could make my ends meet. But it was the best job that I could ever think of. I did. Even today, I'm so proud of it. I did many jobs before that, but I talk less about it. But I do talk about this one. It's called Forensic Files. It's a television show, a
Okay.
docudrama called Forensic Files. It started out being called Medical Detectives. It was being made for Discovery. And I was sitting in the most important position in that whole production where I was finding the stories. It was a true crime television show where how it was a true crime show that highlighted how forensic science solved those crimes. So I told you I was a criminologist in my degree.
Right.
So all of this came together and it was just awesome. I learned more criminology, I learned more forensics making this show. So the first 54 episodes of this, I was the production manager
Nice.
that dealt with all of this, um, including researching the stories. And now it's called Forensic Files, and it's available on Amazon Prime. So if you want to go see it,
Sure,
the
we'll
first
definitely watch
the
it.
first 3 seasons, I think.
Mhm.
Anyway, so at that time, I got an opportunity to buy airtime. See, it's not doable here,
Okay.
except on All India Radio. Even today, you can buy airtime on Vivid Bharati.
Okay.
Okay, but private FM does not sell you airtime.
Oh, they have their
But
own airtime, so you can't purchase it
yeah,
basically.
you try and go buy an airtime on Mirchi for 2 hours once a
They'll
week.
not because they have their own pre-planned everything.
Exactly, everything is pre-planned. See, it's so scripted over here.
Right.
It's crazy. All that freedom's gone
Mhm.
for someone to express themselves. Anyway, uh, I'm not trying to, call it a bad thing.
Hmm.
It works
Right.
for them. It works. So in America, you can buy airtime. There are
Okay.
certain stations that make a living out of selling airtime to people like us who want to do niche shows,
Okay. Got it.
right?
Basically giving you their distribution base for that particular.
No, it's a free-to-air FM station or an
Okay.
AM station,
Got it.
and whatever the coverage is, that's your
Mhm.
coverage. So I got the opportunity to buy airtime on Princeton University's radio station.
Got it.
Okay, the frequency was 103.3 FM. It's the only college radio station in America that had a footprint as big or bigger than a commercial radio station. And there was an Indian show running there for the last 10 years called Avaz.
Okay.
Uh, I was struggling financially, my wife and I both. We had no money to our name. My wife had $400 that she collected we had just got married also. She had collected all her gifts here and there. It was in her bank, and I had zero because I was running the household for what I could. And this opportunity came up there. I could now this Avaz show was shutting down because it was run by college stations, the college students of Princeton University,
Mhm.
Indian college students. And for some reason, nobody wanted to take it on. And I got to know that that slot was open. So I quickly approached them and said, "Can I buy this airtime?"
Yeah.
Okay, so the audience was already there. This is when I started using my little business experience that I had when I ran the magazine. That it's a built-in audience. Now let's just get in there
Mhm.
and get it started. But I had to buy the airtime because I needed to complete my master's thesis. I hadn't completed it during my school year because I was struggling to make a life, so I needed a job quickly. And the university gives you 4 years to complete, although it's a 2 year program, the master's, but they give you 4 years to complete. So I didn't do my thesis, so I hadn't graduated yet. So eventually I needed to graduate. So my master's thesis was supposed to be something that was academic, but I didn't want to do anything academic. I wanted to do something that's practical I can use in my real life. So I decided my thesis subject would be, will mainstream advertisers advertise on an ethnic media?
Okay.
because it was America. We were ethnic media,
Hmm.
and mainstream advertisers are the ones like United Airlines or
Hmm.
State Farm Insurance, and whatever they would advertise to the general public. So that was my thesis. For that, I needed a radio show. So there was another radio show run by a newspaper, Indian newspaper there, called News India Times, and they had their slot Saturday morning at 8 a.m. I approached them to say, hey, can I do my show so that I can validate my thesis? And they said yes. And by the time I got down to doing it, for some reason, maybe I'm intimidating to a lot of people or whatever, they decided, no, I'm sorry, we don't want you here. So then I had no vehicle. And that's when this opened up on the same day.
Awaz show.
Our show opened up on the same day, Saturday morning, but it was from 10 to 12 in the morning. So I quickly ran there and I said, hey, listen, I want to buy your airtime. Now, I didn't have money. I just said, I want to buy your airtime. Can I? So they said, okay, you have to give us advance of $400 and sign the contract. And a month later, you can start your show. So I had a month to get myself advertisers because I couldn't afford to buy the airtime even.
Right.
So the $400 was my first angel funding came from my wife. So
So
she
she was
pretty
your
much,
first angel investor.
yeah, in the business of radio, absolutely. So she gave me the first $400 and I paid the station. The contracts were signed. And now I had 1 month to begin my show. So my show began on March 7th, on Women's Day, 1997. And I called it Anil Ki Awaaz
Right.
because I kept the Awaaz word. And a lot of shows in America that were personality driven had the name of the person.
Like Joe Rogan show is also.
Exactly. It's still
Yeah.
there. So it was called Anil Ki Awaaz. And March 7th, on Women's Day, I began. But in that 1 month, I was, yes, doing the medical detective show, whatever my job was. And in the evenings, I would drive 70 miles to Philadelphia, which was the closest big city that had a lot of Indian grocery stores in pretty much one line or in the same vicinity as a cluster. And I would knock on every door saying,
For
hey,
the
I'm starting my radio show. Will you advertise? And this is the rate. It's an introductory rate. And obviously, a lot of doors shut. But luckily for me, four people just had faith because I was nobody.
right.
I was there in America for 2 years,
I think that is why that question came to me, how you got a sponsor for the podcast. Right.
right? I was a nobody, and nobody had ever heard my talent, or even if I had talent. But somehow I was able to convince them, and they gave me a check, and I was able to collect $1,000, which was the cost for my airtime for the month.
Right.
So pretty much I had 1 month's money now. So I could start my show, and if I don't collect enough advertising in that month, then the
Next
show is
month,
dead.
yeah.
No one was funding me. I didn't know anybody there that would give me money at that time. So that's how Anil Ki Awaaz began. And that's where I had all the freedom I had. I did what I want, played the music I want, said what I had to say. My mission in life was to buy my first house in America with the money I made on Anil Ki Awaaz. And in the year 2000, that happened.
Great.
So 3 years later, that happened. And that house still belongs in our family because my son bought the house from me now
Oh, nice.
because he was born in that house in 2000. And so it's still in the family. But उस अनिल की आवाज़ के पैसे से घर खरीदा मैंने. Well, I ran Anil Ki Awaaz for 10 years. Okay, so
Right.
I got a Limca Book of Records as the longest running syndicated show outside of India.
Great.
In that, and when I say syndicated, what happened is it got so popular, I earned a lot of advertising money and I put it all back in the business. So I didn't use that money to buy a BMW or anything. I put it back in the business. I invested in when I started the show, I was using tape,
Hmm.
cassette tapes,
Right.
because I didn't have anything. I didn't have equipment. I couldn't afford anything. I just went to the radio station and I had to play cassette tapes. So I would, in those days you had pirated cassettes that your friends had of music.
Right. Right.
I didn't even have a cassette player at home for my own entertainment. So I borrowed all of that. And I would use the pencil and cue up the cassette tape just for the rights as soon as the song should begin, right? Because my radio aesthetics was also that I shouldn't have any dead air. There should always be something going on. There should be no air that was blank, because that is a kiss of death for any radio program for that matter. So it was that meticulous. I would plan my day. Then I graduated to CDs because I couldn't afford to buy CDs. But as the money kept coming in, I would then buy certain CDs. But you needed a collection. And I then got to a local CD chap who sold CDs, and I did a deal with him. I said, I'll give you mention, and you can give me your CDs. So at least then I got the latest music.
Got it.
Otherwise, I didn't even have the latest music because movies in the 90s were releasing quite fast, and the 90s were great music, like Kumar Sanu days and Sonu Nigam days, Udit Narayan.
You feel that freedom of expression, you talked a lot about it. Is this something that is driving rage on podcasts these days as well? Many people are
See,
doing
podcast was even a thing then.
Okay,
It's so new now. And in fact, this whole situation of three camera shoots, this is not a podcast, this is a TV show.
got it.
I take serious exception to dilution. That's what I'm telling you. Everything has no boundaries here now. Not that they need it,
So
but a
what is basic
podcast.
definition of podcast as per you?
Podcast was an Apple created brand.
Right.
Apple had this thing called the iPod.
Hmm.
So anything that was not music that came on iPod was a podcast. So it was created by them for their brand.
Right.
And it just caught on because no one else did it. So it was actually nothing but recorded audio available to you on demand, just like music is, where you can pick from music titles on Spotify or Savan or Ghana or wherever. It was just audio content, spoken word audio, which I call SWAP, spoken word audio programming.
Got it. So yeah.
It's an acronym I coined. Credit goes here, okay?
Okay.
So SWAP is nothing but recorded audio that was not music available to you to listen to, giving people with specialized knowledge an opportunity to talk to people who had interest in that specialized knowledge.
Got
That
it.
was it. Because FM radio in those days didn't give you that time, but in America they did. People like me could buy airtime and do a talk show.
Right.
So podcasting became a thing quite early during my time. And I also ran an online radio station at the same time. So all my shows were available online. So I had a lot of listeners in India in those days.
Got
But
it.
online radio in India was nothing, not happening. It was called Radio Bakwas. And Anil Ki Awaaz was a show on Radio Bakwas.
Okay.
So people ask me, why do you call it Radio Bakwas? Because it caught your attention. And there's no way you can tell me तेरा radio show बकवास है. तो हाँ मैं ही बोल रहा हूँ ना है.
हाँ उसमें क्या कर
So
लोगे?
उसमें जहर निकल गया. तो बस डसना हो गया, बस जहर निकल गया उसमें से. So I had 30 some thousand subscribers at that time. I'm talking in 97.
I think 30,000 of that time would be equivalent to at least 15,
Correct.
20
So
million.
clearly I wasn't a great businessman. Right? I knew how to build businesses, but I didn't know how to monetize it in a way that's playing the valuation game today. I'm still the old school, run a business with profit and then value that business.
Got it.
Okay, which is how Radiowalla is now. So anyway, so when I was doing this for 10 years, I would buy airtime in other cities now
Right.
at the same time. So I can just do one broadcast and it goes everywhere. So I had to build a broadcast studio in my basement, in my own home,
Right.
because I couldn't possibly go to Chicago or Houston or San Francisco or Atlanta or Washington, D.C. And these were where my shows were broadcast in Las Vegas. So I only had to do it in my basement.
Mhm.
So I built a broadcast studio in my basement. And then I was broadcasting uh, in 2 days, Saturdays and Sundays. Then I got a job that got me traveling on my TV side, right? So I had to travel the Far East. And before that, I was in a company that I worked in London. I was working in an Indian television company that was setting up 8 TV stations on B Sky B, the DTH platform, which you call Tata Sky today.
Right.
B Sky B. So now my commute was, I flew to London, was there Monday through Friday, and Saturday or Friday night I would fly back to
It
New
was
Jersey
complete hustle.
to fly back to New Jersey to do my show, and then fly back on Monday. So I did that for a year some. And I thought this was not a good idea. Then technology became a little better, where I could actually connect my laptop to my broadcast station at home. So then I started broadcasting from wherever I was. I
Right.
didn't have to fly back home. So essentially, my laptop became my studio. So I did my first broadcast like that from a Lufthansa flight because it happened to be that I had to fly during the show. So I tried not to miss my show at all because, see, the beauty of this business is you need to be consistent to keep your audience engaged because they're expecting you to be there.
So do you feel that current generation is missing out on
Absolutely,
consistency?
absolutely.
They want quick
They're
results.
getting what we call pod fade.
Okay, what's that?
That it fades away. Your enthusiasm fades away. Your podcast enthusiasm fades away. It's pod fade. So I've designed my businesses to help pod fade. So if you go to justpod.com, we now start helping people who don't have the consistency to keep editing because see, if you start editing everything you did,
Right,
you will stop doing it.
right,
You have all of this team, you pay the money, so it's becoming an expensive affair
right,
and for which you need to sustain it. So many people don't have the money to do this, nor do they have the skill to do that, to edit.
right.
So JustPod is designed for such people who have great content but just don't have the bandwidth to edit their audio. And it's for audio,
Got it.
right? So those things became an issue here. But in my time, consistency was my ethic to a point where my daughter, when she was being delivered in the delivery room, it happened to be on the day of my show. So I broadcast live from the delivery room. So all my listeners actually got to hear Kavya's first cry.
Great.
Well, same thing happened with my son 2 years later. In 2005, my dad passed away here in Bangalore. So I came home and it happened to be on the day of my show. So I was broadcasting live from the Samshan Ghat. All my listeners got to hear what was going on there. It was the craziest time of my life. My dad lying in front of me, but my audience was waiting for me too.
So what suggestion would you like to give to current generation to stay consistent? Because I feel that in world
No,
of
they have to
social
be committed.
got it.
Consistency comes when you're committed, and that has to come because it's driving you to tell your story. I would show up even if one person was listening to me, because that one person takes his time or her time to come and listen to me. It's my responsibility to be there. Now, I did a show for 17 years, but now life changed for me and I can't do my show. So I stopped doing my show. I won't do it, oh, I have time today, so let's do my show. I will start again, but only when I know that I can be consistent.
So do you feel that materialism has a play here? So generation is becoming more materialistic. So if they don't get quick results, that is where they stop
Yeah,
being
they're
consistent.
impatient. The same thing about attention span you talked about earlier.
Right,
Impatience has become part of your personality,
right,
and it's detrimental to a creator even more.
right,
Even today, I do engage an audience, but in a different way,
right.
more for organ donation awareness stuff. But people keep asking me, "Oh, hey, listen, we were hoping to have 100 people here, but there's only 10 showed up."
Hmm.
I'm like, 10 showed up, I'm showing up.
Right,
Even if two show up, I'll show up.
right.
You've got to be committed. It's because I'm committed to the cause. So if you're not committed to the content and the stories you want to tell,
Then better don't do it.
don't do it. Don't do it because then you will have zero results. Unless for some freak, by some freak luck, that it becomes viral because you said something crazy,
Hmm.
well, then good luck to you. Make the best of it.
So talking about people who want to start career in say media entertainment industry, what are certain set of skills that you look at while hiring or that should be present in someone's profile that will make them a good candidate or stand out if you are interviewing them?
Well, I'm not
Mm.
normal.
Okay,
Many will say that. I'm still a little old school. Fauji ka ladka hu, so I'm still a little strict where things are concerned. Even with my kids, it's the same. Now my daughter works with me, and she's bearing the brunt of it. Uh, But I will tell you one thing, that anyone that works with me so far has worked with me consistently becomes employable because I ensure that they learn something. It's not because I want them to.
Right.
I've done enough in my life.
Right.
I don't need you to teach me. I will learn from my own initiatives. I will study. I will find the information I need because I'm committed. But when they commit themselves to me to work in my projects with me, not for me, I want them to be walking out of here whenever they do, saying, I learned something. So I have that mentorship gene in me because my mom's a teacher. She's still a teacher. At 77, she's still a journalism professor in a college in Bangalore,
Nice.
right? Maybe I got that gene. I don't know.
So consistency is one thing that you definitely reward in.
Absolutely.
What are the two or three
No,
skills?
so the other thing is what I reward is you can lie to me in your resume.
Okay.
You're allowed to. That I've done this, I've done that, because that will probably get you in the door, right? Oh, this is an impressive resume.
Right.
I allow it. Even if I know you're BSing me, but if you have the gall to lie in your resume that you know this and you know that, I'll give you 3 months. You figure it out. Show me that you know this.
Got it.
Because there are a lot of people who don't have access, but they have the fire inside. So it's a risk I take because 3 months of my time and salaries and all of that is expensive.
Right.
But the people I do find out of this are people that stay and they actually deliver. Because I'm one of those guys. With this competition around you, there's so many resumes. I mean, there's a whole pile of CVs that come onto a table. My first job, which is the medical detective's job,
Right.
I had to find a way that my CV from the bottom came to the top.
Right.
So I had to do jugaad. And this was in America. Here I'm competing with local guys and girls.
Right.
Is desi ko kaun kaam dega?
Hmm.
In those days was recession. Bill Clinton just became president for the first time. It was the deepest recession in that 92, right? 93, 94, it just kept going. So I had to do massive jugaad. It was crazy, but I got it. I got the job. I got the interview. So if someone comes in like that, I'll give you a shot.
But in this industry, I also feel Anil, that communication skills are very important because you.
Absolutely. You're
So
in the business of
so
communication.
if
If you don't
somebody
know how to communicate, what the
so if
hell?
somebody wants to start but they are not so good with communication, what are some of the things that they can do to improve
Right.
themselves?
Again, so if they have the drive and the initiative, the business I've set up now is to make sure that we can teach you that.
Okay.
If you want to learn, we'll teach you.
Okay.
But you've got to give me your blood, sweat, and toil. You can't come in and say, okay, this is what I expect as a salary. I know nothing, and here's where. No, no. It's like a gurukul. You come here, you've got to give something to get something.
Got it.
Right? If knowledge is important to you, and I always say, you follow Saraswati, Lakshmi will follow. Don't follow Lakshmi.
Got it. Maybe then start giving your best at the same time. Also be with a growth mindset that okay, if things will not work out, maybe I'll put more from my side instead of maybe just backing out after 1 or 2 months if things are not moving.
Well, 1 or 2 months and you back out, it's just a shame on your tenacity.
Right.
Because even to create a habit of work ethic, you've got to keep doing it for one month. Anything for 1 month becomes
Do you
a
believe
habit,
in
right?
10,000 hour rule that people
I
generally say that if you put in 10,000 hours, then you will become master at that particular skill?
see when you go back to the old Marwadi businessmen of
Right.
of India,
Right.
they have a rule: 3 साल दुकान में बैठो, फिर बाहर निकलो.
Acha.
So now that's translated to all kinds of jargon in MBA schools.
हाँ 3 साल हो ही गया आपके उतने घंटे.
1000 दिन वही है ना?
Right.
So you got to stick to something long enough before you venture out. Establish something that you started and then venture out. अब 10 काम साथ में करने जाओगे तो कहाँ focus करोगे?
Right. That is very true.
And so Radiowalla became, so I was called the Radiowalla in America,
Okay, from there the name came.
right? Acha Anil wo Radiowalla.
Hmm.
So it stuck, right? So wherever I went, regardless of what I did more TV than radio, but they knew me as Radiowalla.
Right. Right.
And of course, I came back. My goal was to come back to India when I could run a private FM station.
Right.
That was my ambition. So before I left the country in 94, 92, I went with a specific goal, and it was stated in public. So it was in some newspaper article at that time. I still have it somewhere, and I keep looking at it. Okay, in 10 years I'll come back. Chalo 10 mein nahi hua, 15 mein ho gaya. So it finally I got hired by India Today. Arun Puri was
Hmm.
starting his second round of FM stations. The first one was Red FM, which he then sold. So in the phase two of private FM, he bought 7 stations, and he needed someone to run that. And so somehow with Jugad, I got my resume on his table. And the Jugad was through a gentleman called Harry Bhatia, who was the CFO of Radio Mirchi,
Okay.
who with his CEO, Mr. Parigi, came to the US to expand Radio Mirchi in America. And this was in 2001 or 2 or somewhere there. And so they wanted to buy my show, Anil Ki Awaaz,
Hmm.
and call it Mirchi,
Okay.
which I found very perplexing. I said, I don't have anything to sell you except my airtime, which I don't own. You could be buying airtime like me and start Mirchi in America. Why come to buy me? Because to buy Anil Ki Awaaz, you got to buy Anil, and I'm not for sale.
Right.
But nevertheless, we met, and that's the first time I had any interaction with anyone in private FM in India. So Harry sent my resume through another friend of his, who incidentally, Harry is my co-founder with Radiowalla,
Nice.
and that friend is an investor in Radiowalla.
Nice.
Right? See how things connect. Anyway, so I got into India Today as the CEO for their 7 FM stations, and I launched what they called then Meow 104.8 FM, which was India's first just for women talk radio station. So
Nice.
I changed format. There was no music. It was 20% music. The rest was talk, podcasts,
Podcast.
live podcasts, right? And only for women, and only women talked about it. So it was the world from a woman's perspective.
We basically talk about some of the career related stuff. So what is one thing in resume of a candidate that excites you if you come across any resume? And what is one thing that they should definitely avoid if they are sending you their resume?
Well, if I had to write a resume to get a job even today, I
Right.
will never get a job. That's not my strength.
Okay.
So if I have to judge somebody's strength by how they write or don't write a resume, then I'm missing out some good candidates.
Right. Right.
So if they find a way to get to me and speak to me,
Mm.
my resume assessment will be on my interaction with you.
So what is one question that you ask them which basically gives you a complete picture? Make or break question. Every interviewer has one.
I do have one. When you come to an interview, know where you're going. If you're coming to get a job in Sochcast, which is the company I run now,
Right.
sochcast.com. Sorry, I'm plugging in here, but I'm hiring at this point because it's building, right? And we're
Right.
building this startup. If you come to me and I say, I want to work with Sochcast, and I say, okay, how much do you know about Sochcast? And you say, oh, I don't know anything about Sochcast. 0, you failed. Next.
So you have to research a lot about
Well,
the
yes, if you're going to spend 8 hours a day in a company, you need to know where you're going to do that.
Right.
Maybe you don't like what we do.
So who
Why waste your time or mine?
was your first hire and
Oh,
when you were
that's a
starting?
long time ago, man. I don't even remember.
Was it your batchmate? Maybe
No,
some.
no. There was no such thing.
Okay.
In my batch, I'm probably the only guy in media.
Okay.
Everyone else is an engineer, doctor, lawyer. I was a duffer in college or school. No, in college I was okay, but in school I barely passed. I failed my first year in college.
I think that is also a learning for audiences which are watching, because most of the time I also get asked this question: is 90 90 90 the criteria to succeed? But I myself have never got
No,
more than
academics is no judge of human potential.
Right.
It's a scam system that, for the lack of any other, is there.
Right.
And that's why you hear 20 stories or more that people dropped out and became icons, became unicorns. Yeah, so education is okay, but what you learn outside knowledge is different. Today, knowledge is available at the tip of your fingers.
So you need to continuously maybe upskill yourself, level up your game, maybe not
Upskill
from a degree point of
and
view.
experiences.
Right.
Put yourselves in spaces where you experience life. And when you experience life, and that's the bone of contention I have with the current RJs or even TV anchors. They think, oh, as long as I'm looking good, as long as I have a deep baritone voice, then I'm going to make a great RJ. No, the audience is going to look at what's between your ears that
Right.
comes out of your Your soch is cast through
Mm,
your mouth,
right,
and your voice is just a means to that. So that's why I call my company Sochcast,
right.
right?
And what was your dream role in school when you were studying? What you wanted to become? Like most of us
Oh,
generally
bro, it
had.
started with being a doctor because
Okay,
my grandfather was a doctor.
okay. And
And
generally in doctor's family, every other person
my
is
brother is, so he took care
okay.
of
So
that.
he took a hit on your behalf.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he took care of that. And he's a really successful one at that. So he's a neurosurgeon. But I then became very fascinated with being a Fauji.
yeah,
I suddenly developed this deep patriotic gene from my dad. And even today, there are certain things that I will do. Even I'm an American citizen, but I did that for practical purposes. But फिर भी दिल है Hindustani, and that's why I live here.
right.
And a lot of things that I do is to see how I can contribute to nation building here, right?
Got it.
So that that's the that drives me even today. How do I upskill or help people here? How do I find how can Radiowalla and companies from India become global companies outside? We see a lot of MNCs coming here, and we
Right.
give a lot of value to it.
Hmm.
It's time for Indian companies to become MNCs there.
Right.
And Radiowalla, to our in our own little way, and Sochcast, we are going to we operate in 10 countries,
Full.
competing with others in the world, and with brands that are again global brands. So I think India is coming of age where we have the grit, guts, and glory to tell the world that it's made in India.
I think this brings me to last question that I had. You talked about organ donation. Why do you feel there is low awareness regarding this in India? And what are some of the things that
Why
you are
do
doing from your
why do
side?
I feel? What do you know about organ donation?
So, honestly speaking, I also have no idea about it.
Exactly.
Right.
We know what it is, but we don't
Do
know.
you think that main media is not covering this? This might be a reason.
Not covering it enough, but I must give kudos to Times of India. They're doing a fabulous job in partnering with this cause.
Okay.
And if every media company did this, I think we would have solved this problem and no one will die waiting for an organ.
Does government has a bigger role to play here compared to media
Government has a
companies?
bigger role to play in everything. Either they come in the way or they become the
Collaborator.
facilitator,
Right. Right.
right? So government has everything to do with this. Uh, the laws need to be changed, and no one's looking at it. The patient is dying not because of their illness; they're dying because of the bureaucracy that's attached to
Plus,
it.
I think waiting period is also quite
Exactly,
huge
that's the
because
thing.
one of my teammates got her knees operated, so she was going through eye transplant, and I think it took them 5 6 months to get a donor, and by that time,
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You need a donor,
right.
right? So the first thing is create enough awareness that people come forward and display what is inherent in us. It's humanity.
I think as a society, there is taboo related to organ donation,
Again, it comes from fear.
right?
There's no taboo. Taboo is what? It's just another excuse for saying, no, I don't want to do this. But why are you not wanting to do this? Because I don't know enough about it. And because I don't know enough about it, I'm afraid. I don't want to tell people I'm afraid. So I'm going to say that there is this superstition attached to it. So it's taking my fear away. I'm transposing my fear into the superstition and using that as my clutch
Right,
and to say no. So the taboo is really misinformation and fear comes from unanswered questions.
right.
So just answer the questions and there won't be any fear.
Got it.
So I'm a kidney donor. I tell my story firsthand. And I've seen a lot of people deciding to donate their kidneys because of that. So, chalo,
I think
ye-
more stories need to come out,
more
and
stories need to come out, more stories of success, which exists. But who's telling them?
I think I can also do a better job with this distribution base. Maybe start talking more about it. Yeah.
Well, everybody
Mhm.
can because it's about lives being saved. This is one thing that God can't do for you.
Right,
And God gave us the power to do for someone.
right.
We all believe in Ganpati, right?
Mhm.
Even if you're not a Hindu, Ganpati has come up, has gone across because he's the Vignaharta.
Right,
What is a Vignaharta? A clearer of obstacles.
right.
How did he become the Vignaharta? He got killed, right?
Right.
By mistake.
Hmm.
And Shiva was forced to bring him back to life. And what did he find? An elephant. And he transplanted that head onto him. Now, did Shiva know that he was going to become the Vignaharta? No, he just saved his wife's son.
Right.
It wasn't his son, it was his wife's created son. So all he did was that. He saved a life. But the result of that, Lord Ganesh became the Vignaharta of so many people. So why can't we become somebody's elephant?
Right. Why can't we help them out? Yeah.
And who knows, they may become the next discoverer of the vaccine of,
Maybe cure to cancer or something
or
like that.
whatever, of, immortality.
Right.
The point is, you help for some reason, but the outcome is so far reaching. And God cannot do it. He works through us when it comes to this.
Right.
He gave us the knowledge, He gave us the intellect, He gave us the heart. So why aren't we using it?
Got it. I think we'll end on that note because this is a great message, and I'll also like to pass it on to the audience also. That if you are somebody who's looking to donate organ, you can check out a lot of content Anil sir has also put out there. You can read through it.
Gift
Maybe
of Life Adventure.
yeah, Gift of Life Adventures. I'll link it in the description as well. And thank you so much, sir, for coming and interacting
Well,
with us.
thank you. Like I said,
Mhm.
there's so much more to say, but there's so little time.
We'll do a season 2, episode number 2 with you when you are back from US.
No, well, I'm back in a month, but in July I'm going to be driving through 42 countries
Oh, nice.
and to participate in the World Transplant Games. I'm an athlete for India in Team India,
Great.
and it's an Olympics for transplant patients, recipients or donors, like Paralympics. So I'm driving to the venue in Germany. So
So
it'll
when you
take
are
me.
free next, when we can
It'll
catch
be
hold
next
of.
year,
Oh, and I think audience has to wait for season 2. It will come
or
out.
it'll be in June.
Okay.
I'll be in Bangalore for June, July, and then after
Any
that,
plans to come to Delhi, Gurgaon? No.
I don't make a plan, but if it happens, it'll happen because
Yeah,
I,
because our
I, I
whole team is
travel and
out there.
work.
Yeah.
I travel and work, so it could happen.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.